could do it.
Sure. Well, your wife could do it. Yeah, right.
So,
but it would be nearly impossible for
That's right.
else.
Well, kind of speaking of that, our first email question of the night kind of gets into that, Matt. And it comes in from Odell. And I saw this question. I thought this is a perfect one to kind of start us off with. It says, how do I know if I have a case against one of the big companies? I asked my doctor about some of my symptoms and how they relate it to my medical condition that I took, my medicine that I took, and he said, probably not. And what I liked about this question, Matt, is if I was Odell and I'm assuming she's referring to a drug that she's taking.
Yep.
Right. And I immediately, I think of Taxotere and some of the other ones out there.
Right. Docetaxel.
Right. And you're thinking to yourself, oh, let me talk to my doctor. And then the doctor comes back and says, well, maybe not. Then what do you do? See,
Kenny, that's the exact issue, though. I mean, in a lot of those cases, it's a failure to warn, is that the drug companies haven't given your doctor the necessary information for them to know to advise you. They have taken that choice away from you. So they haven't told the doctor. The doctor doesn't know what the symptoms are or what some of the adverse effects are because it's not listed. They don't let him know. So, listen, sometimes things just happen, as they say, and you don't know. Well, I agree. It's a lot of times very difficult, and that's one of the cruxes of those cases is that the doctors themselves don't know to tell you. So, of course, you ask them, is this the drug? They don't know.
Right.
If they knew, they would have said something to begin with. So that's the whole issue. So that's where you've got to call somebody.
I think about the heartburn medicine from a couple of years ago. Zantac was that one. And shoot, that was a huge prescription, an over-the-counter drug. And then all of a sudden it changes. And your doctor's answer today would be a lot different than your doctor's answer from a couple of years ago.
And you mentioned Taxotere. That's a huge deal, right? They didn't disclose some of the side effects, permanent side effects, and the doctors didn't have an explanation. I spoke to oncologists myself about this, and they're like, hey, we didn't know. They didn't tell us. It's only I'm bringing in the materials now. They do know. So they're kind of honestly they're victims like their patients are because listen, every doctor wants to do good, doesn't want to hurt anybody. They want to give their patient correct advice, correct information. And when they're not provided it, they're at a disadvantage. So the doctors are, in a sense, victims as well.
I knew Odell's question would get you
it does.
going. I knew it'd get you fired up on that one. Speaking of, if you ever want to send us an email question, it's so easy, rmlawcall.com. You can go to LawCall. Just put it in the Google machine, pull up LawCall, and you'll find the guys. Find Biloxi or Gulfport or Reeves. If you see Matt's beautiful face, you know on the right place.
You're in the right
You know you're in the right home, and just email us a question. We try to get as many as we can.
I don't know what a Google machine is.
It's on your phone.
Is it?
Mm-hmm. Okay. It is. It's titled Google Machine.
I'll talk to your wife.
It's right there. Yeah. It's got pretty pictures. It's wonderful.
Yeah, well,
all right, Matt, if you're ready, let's get our first phone call of the night. We're going to go to Biloxi, and we are going to talk to Ronnie. Ronnie, good evening. What can we help you with?
Hey, Ronnie.
Yes, my mom's 75 years old, and she had a hip transplant, and she's had that in the last 5 years. I was wondering how would they know if it was recalled?
Ronnie, that's a great question. That's kind of what you were just talking about.
That's exactly what I was talking about, Ronnie. You're right. How would they know? It would be nearly impossible for your mother to know or you to know, but we've all seen it. You've all kind of, there has been a series of medical devices, hips, knees, and other things that have been recalled, that have been determined to be unsafe, to be not appropriate, a product needs to be redone. And so absolutely. So, listen, anytime anyone calls our office and they've had a bad result with a hip or a knee or anything that involves a mechanical joint, that's one of the first things we do is we've got to identify exactly what is put in because, Ford makes a lot of cars, all right, just like these, and just like, these manufacturers, they make a lot of products and some are recalled, some aren't recalled. So the first thing you've got to do is identify specifically what was involved, what was put into your family member. And then we backtrack from there and we look at recall notices. But in addition to that, we look at, we send out to our contacts and we see, because sometimes, quite frankly, the lawyers are ahead of the recall notices. We're the result, our work causes a recall notice. And so, we talk to them, we look at emerging trends and is this litigation kind of going on? And so those are the kind of things that we can bring to the table when you bring those kind of cases in.
Great question, Ronnie. I really do appreciate the call this evening. When we come back here on Law Call, we have tonight's legal brief plus more of your legal questions and calls here on Law Call.
Welcome back to WLOX Law Call, Broadcasting from the Gulf Coast to the Pine Belt with lawyers from the Biloxi personal injury law firm of Reeves Mestayer. The attorneys for South Mississippi, including Jim Reeves, known as a tough fighter. Jim has more than 100 cases with a recovery of $1 million or more and is recognized as a top 100 trial lawyer by the National Trial Lawyers Association. Plus Matthew Mestayer. Matthew served as an award-winning judge for nearly 20 years, has recovered millions for his clients, and is deeply involved in community issues on the entire coast. And hosted by broadcaster Ken Flanagan. The show has included over 200 guest attorneys from across Mississippi. This is WLOX Law Call.
You know, we hit like 200 guest attorneys like in 19.
Yeah.
And then the pandemic happened.
Yeah, then we've stopped.
Yeah, I think it's like 201 now.
Do we have guests on the show anymore?
Yeah,
it feels like it's been you and I for a
it
long
feels
time.
like that way. We were rolling
Yeah.
up a good total, and then everything changed.
Right.
And, so
feels
they
like
were-
that movie.
Look,
with
we
the
had
two people
Scott
stuck
on
the
last
island.
week. We had
By
Scott on
Zoom.
last week.
Yeah,
so
did a great job.
Maybe 202 now.
Yeah. Yeah.
No reason
Oh.
to change the promo currently.
No reason.
That's right. All right. Welcome back to Law Call here on this Saturday night. We are broadcasting from the Gulf Coast all the way through the Pine Belt, all points in between. So happy to have you along. We are talking about dangerous and defective products tonight. And we've kind of focused on the medical side of it, but there's also all sorts of other products out there as well. Ladders and slip and falls and mats and mops and anything else. All of that is on the table for you tonight.
Yep.
And let's see here. Matthew, if you're ready to go, we're going to go to line 2 and we're going to talk to Karen. Karen, good evening. What can we help you with?
Hey, Karen.
I'm calling in regards to an accident, a major bicycle accident that our son had recently. He was riding and the handlebars came off, and he broke his nose and his arm and most likely a concussion. Question is how can we prove that the people who made the bike, the manufacturer, is liable for his medical bills?
Karen, great question. I can hear the concern in her voice on that one, Matt. And you're an avid bike rider.
Oh,
so.
indeed. So, you know, you kind of, we're seeing more and more of that, Kenny, you know,
Really?
bike injuries. I think, honestly, because of the pandemic, I think a lot more people are out riding bicycles, which is certainly nice to see. But unfortunately, bikes and cars don't mix. No. And then bikes, when they have a breakdown, you know, like this does. So, you know, well, listen, she has a great question, and that is what you have to look to. You have to get, there are actually experts, engineering experts that you have to kind of bring in, and they have to analyze. They have to figure out. Honestly, I don't have the expertise, the technicality, and nor does, you know, with all due respect, Karen may not either.
Right.
So you bring in safety engineers. There are people who specialize in this kind of work, and they can kind of recreate. They can give us with, you know, accurate, you know, very accurate to a scientific proof, you know, what happened, why did it fail? You know, maybe the part failed, maybe it was installed incorrectly. One issue is, has the bike been repaired? Has anyone kind of adjusted it? Has anyone done anything to it? So they kind of go through all of those
Wear
things.
and tear.
The wear and tear. They look at all those things, and they come up actually with a report and an analysis on, you know, the most likely cause and result. And interestingly, you know, the standard is you don't have to prove with absolute certainty. That's not required in law in any aspect, but it's, you know, more likely than not. The 51% is quite frankly the standard you have to meet, because, and you know, but you have to bring in experts, and we do this quite frankly all the time. Sometimes we have to do reconstructions, recreations of an accident.
Wow.
Sometimes, you know, we have to honestly destroy the item to kind of test it, and you have to let people know. So this is, you know, as you kind of alluded to, as we talked about earlier, you know, this area of the law, there's no area more complicated and more expensive, more tricky, more technical than this, because when you start bringing in engineers and metallurgists and safety engineers and kinesiologists, things like that, it gets very, very technical.
Matt, I think this kind of goes, obvious question. They need to keep that bicycle, don't they? They need
Absolutely.
to keep the handlebars. They need to keep the bike. They need to keep all of it, don't
You know,
they?
a lot of pictures, you know, don't try to mess with it yourself, but this is something you want to kind of turn over to your lawyer as soon as possible.
I got you.
Interesting as segues, someone came into my office actually last week. They were at a local, I'm not going to name the place, they were at a local establishment, a food establishment, and they had glass in their beverage. And unfortunately, they consumed a fair amount of glass in the beverage. So,
Like a beer bottle, like beer bottle glass, or like?
just glass. It was, you know, it was kind of a soft drink, kind of an open soda fountain kind of thing. And they got, unfortunately, about 90% through, and
Realized.
thought which was sugar crystals, ended up being something else.
Oh,
and this has resulted in substantial medical issues. So, you know, that's exactly what kind of so we have to. It's, you know, it's incumbent upon me and my staff and my team to kind of figure out what went wrong, what happened, how did we get here, and really who's responsible. So that's the kind of things we do all the time, and we're prepared to do it.
So it sounds like Karen, goes back to what we were saying at the beginning of the show, definitely needs to contact an attorney on this one.
They do, Kenny, and my friends, the two that I have, the several that I have, they tease me all the time about,
friends?
two, well, yeah, I do, maybe.
That's good.
Anyway,
Better than one.
Anyway, certainly, double that. Anyway, and they tell me all the time, they say, you always say get a lawyer on the show. And honestly, I don't. A lot of times we talk about it, and a lot of times I say, hey, this is something maybe you can kind of start yourself.
Right.
This is something maybe you can kind of at least advance to a degree yourself. But in this particular area, virtually impossible to do yourself. So absolutely call an attorney, call the right law firm, make sure they have some history, they've got the expertise.
You have mean friends. That's all there is to
Well,
it.
you're one of the two, Kenny.
Oh, never mind.
Never mind.
Never mind.
So there you go.
I've
got more than two.
Proof is in the
I have
pudding.
more than
Proof is
two.
in the pudding.
But
Karen,
anyway.
thanks so much for the call. Best of luck with your son and this bike issue. It
Yeah.
sounds like it was pretty serious. All right. All right, moving on here. Let's see here. We've got Collins, it looks like. Collins is going to be joining us from Loosedale. Loosedale, Collins, what can we help you with?
Hey, Collins, how are
I was released from the hospital recently after being in there for about 2.5 weeks for intestinal bleeding, had surgery, blood transfusions, the works, and had 2 different doctors tell me that it might be related to a medication that I'd started taking recently. They didn't want to say for sure, but I guess I'm wondering, how do you determine whether or not the medication would be to blame for what happened, or if I just had a bad reaction to it that was not typical?
Collins, we kind of referenced that a little bit earlier in the show after the email question, but great question for this topic.
Absolutely, and he's asking the right questions, Kenny. And really, the question he's asking is this a one-off? Is this just, did I just have something about me have a certain reaction with this product that, which, they can't be perfect to everybody, and so, that's one issue. Or is this a problem with this product? And exactly, and we have kind of touched upon this, and that's exactly what we do, because, your doctors may not know, but we're kind of on the, cutting edge of this event.
Sure.
And this is what we talk about all the time. A lot of these cases, it's hidden, side effects, hidden problems, hidden damage that these products do that they don't disclose to their doctor.
Right.
So the doctor can't tell you. And so I get it. And as I say, the doctor, he may be as much in the dark as you about really what's causing this, but the litigation process is very effective in this kind of thing, fixing these things, bringing attention to these things. So absolutely, we can look at it. But also, as we talk about all the time, Kenny, and that time is critical for these kind of cases, because I can promise you, listen, here's the general, it's very complicated, but as it pertains to this, when you have a company that's done something wrong and they know they've done something wrong, and and it's the, okay, you got me kind of thing. The next thing is, well, how can I end this? How can I kind of capture my liability?
Right.
Who do I have to pay? What do I have to pay? But I don't want to pay forever. And so they set up a process where, the claims are time barred, that you've got to get your claim timely filed for it to be processed, and then after a certain point of time, you may have the injury, you may have the damage, but you don't have a redress. They have kind of they've bought their piece, they've gotten out of liability. So that is a huge...
Clock is ticking.
It always is. And you see that for, Roundup and talcum powder and all the things kind of you see is that, when there's a resolution, and a lot of times there is, one of the, what the defendants get, one of the major things they want, what they're trying to get, is they want to get an end to this. They want to get, they want to cut off their liability, cut off their exposure.
Speaking of an end,
we
got to end this. We got to end this segment. I'm sorry, buddy.
There's no end, Kenny.
When we come back, we'll have more of Matt's
stay with us, Colin,
and contact information when we turn on LawCall. And welcome back to LawCall on this Saturday evening. Here's that contact information I promised you. Matthew Mestayer, Reeves Mestayer, 228-374-5151. They have the toll-free number, and rmlawcall.com, as we mentioned earlier, for all your email questions. We'd love to have them in there. Phone lines have been hopping all night, but we do have another email question that came in, Matt. But before, did you have anything else for Colin there?
After you cut me off,
I know, I
Colin,
felt bad.
After you cut me off,
I think you were talking.
Down
There
to
are
one, friend.
deadlines.
Down to one.
Yeah, there are
Anyway.
important deadlines,
Colin,
and
if he would just stop talking.
I know,
so can
I'm
get
sorry.
Back to business.
Yes.
Anyway, Colin, yeah. Short answer is, Colin, the law does not. You can't sit on your rights. If
Right.
you have something like this, you got to move on it quickly to make sure you get the compensation that you need to get when you need to get it.
Okay, very good. All right, let's go to a very serious email that came in.
Yep.
And Matt, you touched on this earlier. This comes from Billy. I'm going to read it as quick as I can. My mom has been in extreme pains for weeks. She is getting ready to have surgery to replace a hip implant that did not take. The doctor is acting like it's the implant fault, which Matt, you've kind of alluded to. I don't know who to believe. Either way, my mom is a victim. Is there something we can do, or should she see a lawyer about this? You were talking about it earlier, the hips and the knees and the shoulder implants. There's some great products out there, but there have been some zonkers out there too.
There have been some clunkers for
Yeah,
sure,
clunkers.
Absolutely, and we see it. And once again, I think your doctor's probably more right than wrong. But absolutely, kind of we can help in that process. We have to move quickly because as really some of the damage, the subsequent surgeries, because listen, that's what happens when you have a bad hip, when you have one of these faulty products. The part of the damage is you've got to take it out and go through the pain and suffering of an additional surgery and the recovery that goes with it. So absolutely. So sooner rather than later, definitely appropriate legal counsel, getting them involved is always the way to go.
Matt, something you've mentioned before on this topic, and I think it's very interesting, and I think most people probably know it, but every one of these implants, shoulder, hip, there are barcodes or serial numbers on there. I mean, they just don't put these things, every one of them is identified with you permanently, isn't it?
Absolutely. And you have to know, and you're right, you're absolutely right, that it's true.
It's tattooed on there somewhere.
Well, not
sort
yeah,
of.
something kind of. Yeah. Anyway, he won't be working on the case.
Scratched
anyway, but no, and I tell you, and sometimes it's tricky. It's very difficult because there's a process. Even when you ask for records, it's not part of their normal kind of record production process. Even if you say, hey, someone had a surgery, can we see the records? They send those things out all the time. That's a special kind of process. So everything about this is nuanced. Everything about this is a little bit tricky. But if you know what you're doing, know what you're looking for, of course, it's okay. But it'd be hard to wade into this your first time.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
hopefully you never have a double hip outside of it. But it hasn't. I do know one of our veterans in George County, guy that works closely with our Veterans Affairs office. He had a terrible hip and had to do the replacement and the whole bit, and it was a faulty product. And he's had a hard time moving forward, but doing much better now.
And I tell you, and the bad thing is, these are big surgeries under any circumstance, but when it goes bad, when you have a bad product, they have to redo it. It seems like they just, there's a struggle. Right. It's a longer struggle than sometimes, you need it to be.
Matt, I want to backtrack to one of the things you were saying. There is an aspect of the law, this is for those friends who get on to you, there is an aspect of the law that you do talk about, the self-documenting that you can do on these things. And I'm kind of thinking of, going back to our bike call from earlier, that is something you could get on Google. I mean, we have had the chances now on Facebook. You can do some research before you call and say, hey, look, I do think my X, Y, and Z bike has had an issue. I mean, there is some stuff they can do to help out.
You're talking about the Google machine again?
The Google machine.
You didn't say that.
The Yahoo.
But no, you can. And that's a fine way to start, and people can do that. And listen, people come in all the time. I meet with people all the time, free of charge. They've done some research. They've been on the intranet, as we like to say, the Google machine, and they come in, they have some stuff. And sometimes it's very good information. Sometimes it's absolutely spot on. And, and they want to talk to somebody about it. And we're happy to kind of follow up and see what they've taken and kind of run with it. So
and that's a starting spot.
It's a good place to start.
And then Matt, real quick, social media, it is such a big thing. If you have been hurt, and it is against one of the big companies, they're going to be watching your social media accounts, aren't they?
We should do actually a show on social media and the law.
Actually,
show and the social media and the law. See the synergy. Anyway, no, Kenny, I promise you, it is now standard practice in any big case to ask about your social media accounts, to get copies of it. So when we take on a new client and we have a case, we're going down that road together. There's a long discussion about don't post anything, don't put pictures, don't put this, because
Matt, great way to end the show tonight. It really is. So man, it flew by. Thank you so much for all of our calls and emails tonight. And we will be back next Saturday night taking your legal calls and questions here live on the air. But until then, good night.
WLOX LawCall, underwritten in the public interest by the law firm of Reeves Mestayer, the attorneys for South Mississippi.
And welcome to Law Call on WLOX and WDAM on this Saturday evening. So happy that you stayed around live with us tonight after the hockey game. We're so happy to have you in. And a great topic too, one that we have literally not done in a year. We're going over crime and punishment tonight. That's right, criminal law. So if you've been stopped in a traffic stop or had a search warrant, or any other encounter with law enforcement, we want to hear from you tonight. DUIs, criminal offenses, or if you've been the victim of a violent crime, we want to hear from you as well. The phone lines are now open, 896-0713 or 1-800-349-0713. We got your live phone calls coming up in this show, plus 2 really interesting email questions a little bit later in the show. But now joining me, as he does every Saturday night, our friend and your friend, that's right, Matthew Mestayer. Matthew, great to have you in on Saturday night again.
Indeed,
Last time we were here, we were a little late because of
Easter.
Easter, Ten Commandments, and Moses.
It was worth it, Kenny.
And tonight, hockey. So we're catching it all. We're catching all of them.
Worth it,
Maybe not quite the same on that side. Matt, we have not done this show in quite some time. Crime and punishment, crime and the law. Great topic. Why did you choose it for tonight?
Well, Kenny, listen, the show is all about getting information out to people.
That's right.
And quite frankly, listen, I expect a lot of our viewers probably have not seen the felony system, obviously.
Right.
But, maybe have got a traffic ticket. And I can tell you, that process, while not the felony process, it is intimidating, and people have a lot of questions. And so we want to get information out, and I bet people have a lot of questions, so excited about hearing what the questions are and try to get some good information out tonight.
Okay, very good. That is our topic for tonight's show. We have got a great panelist when it comes around to showing all of us again.
Yeah,
there he is.
There we are.
There he is, joining us for the first time on Law Call. Right. We're so happy. Had his dad on twice.
Yeah.
Now we get Kyle Miller. Thank you so much for coming in and staying up late with us on a Saturday night.
About 12 when his dad was on.
Yes,
so
exactly.
Kyle's just at 20, everyone.
Exactly.
So happy birthday.
Matt, tell us a little bit about Kyle and why you brought him on tonight's show.
Listen, I brought him on the Tonight Show because he's an expert, quite frankly.
Right.
Kyle does almost exclusively criminal law. He's got a practice in Pascagoula. I actually took over his dad's practice. Does a lot of misdemeanor crimes, a lot of DUIs, things like that, but also does felonies. But he's one of kind of the rising stars in the criminal defense bar. Great guy, good lawyer, been a fan of the show a long time. Glad to have him. We've been wanting to get him on for quite a while.
Yes.
Glad to finally have him on.
Kyle, welcome to the show.
Absolutely. I appreciate y'all having me on.
Tell us a little bit about your practice. The criminal defense side of the law is maybe the most publicized side of the law. I mean, gosh, there must be 10 TV shows on right now about that. Talk to us about your practice and what are some of the things you do?
So mainly, all I deal with at my practice is criminal defense. I don't do any type of family law. I don't do any type of, I don't sue anybody or anything like that. But what I do is I defend anybody who is charged with a criminal offense here in the state of Mississippi.
Gotcha. And you've been doing a lot with traffic type of criminal law, and there's a lot there nowadays. Of course, DUI I think probably springs to everybody's mind. Tell us some of those stuff you're doing in your firm with kind of traffic criminal law.
We represent a lot of trucking industry individuals.
Sure.
A lot of people who are from other states that use 18-wheelers and come down I-10 or anything like that. We get a ton of those types of clients, whether it's running a weigh station, whether it's their load being too large, skipping the scales and things like that. So that is a large portion of what I do. Along with DUI.
You got to go to the scales. You got to keep the logbook up. You got to make sure you got the right weights, everything.